All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is 2 o'clock on December the 9th.
All right.
Would you call the roll?
Here.
Director Finch,
Here.
Director Wyrick,
Here.
Director Thielke,
Here.
and Chair Hages.
Here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum.
We just stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is Director announcements. Peter.
Well, I think it might be appropriate to just mention that during this drought, one of the things we've had to deal with is we have 4 wells up on our canyon, and one of them has been going from pumping 80 to 100 gallons a minute since 1951, and that well has dropped down below the pump level. So that's the first time we've seen that in our tenure here. So we're struggling these wells supply a couple ranches up there, and part of the drought we're struggling to, have enough water to supply those ranches. But I'm sure it's happening in other parts of the valley, but this is Senior Canyon is also up in the canyon with Hard Rock wells experiencing the effects of the drought.
Thank you. Jim.
Nothing to report. Conservation District did not meet in the interim.
City of Ojai.
If you have a chance, you might want to look out behind City Hall there. The second phase of removal for the native species in Stewart Canyon is pretty well done. There's still a lot of work to do on the replanting, but it's been, looking more as the final state is going to be as that conversion to native species occurs. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is that we did have a preliminary meeting that we thought would continue between 2 council members from Ojai and 2 council members from Ventura. We had a preliminary meeting. We thought we were going to continue, and the city of Ventura has given us notice that they do not want to continue. So we're in more discussion with that.
Okay. Bob.
Nothing from the community district.
And from Casitas Water District, the good news today is the evaporation on the lake's been reduced. John, General Manager comments.
Just a couple of general comments as I was going through things a couple of days ago. I realized we hadn't brought a budget before the board, so I'll put something together and we'll have it for January, because the water year ended September 30. And so we usually do our budget October 1st through September 30. So I'll bring something forward, and we should have a discussion about where we think the pumping charges are, because with the groundwater sustainability plan wrapping up, we won't have the same level of expenses. We will still have an annual report to do. I did get a proposal, but I didn't bring it to this meeting. We'll bring it next month to see what the board wants to do. But DUDEC is proposing around $30,000 to do an annual report. So it just kind of gives you a frame of reference of what you might expect in addition to the normal operating expenses. Secondly, I made an executive decision. We had a computer in the office that was just on its last legs, not so much hardware, but software-wise. You couldn't upgrade it, and it was just creating all sorts of problems. So I just went out and got a new computer, and it's networked with a second computer in the office, which is all of our database backup and all of our financial backup, and so we just didn't need to lose all that. So we made sure that we've got a good system up and operating. And we've got, there's a backup.
Carbonite?
Carbonite. We have Carbonite to back up all our data and information. So we've gone ahead and got that cleaned up and upgraded. So it's about probably $1,000 worth of work. I mean, it's not a terrible lot of money, but, and that's all I have.
All right, thanks, John. Jordan, basin status.
try to make this as brief as we're moving along here pretty quick in both the recharge period of time and things are changing dynamically. The input side, obviously, we're getting traces of rain right about now, and that means that there is, of course, reduced evapotranspiration. And that's an important concept as far as lack of needing to pump and of course, eventual recharge that's going to work its way down into the basin. We're still in the sub 2-inch annual precipitation number, but that's changing literally up top as we speak. The key well, as of earlier this week, had a depth of 192.86, which is the deepest we've seen in a bit of time, but it's kind of jumped around near that nadir since late October. So we're in around that 60% of capacity range. On the discharge side, the San Antonio Creek at the basin output point is flowing very similar to last month at around between 7/100th and 9/100th of a CFS, or just under 0.1 or a tenth of a CFS. The nested monitoring well project update, that we're planning on doing another round of sampling later this month toward the end of the year/quarter, probably between the Christmas and New Year holiday. And we forwarded the report we completed this December to Roberta. I didn't see it in the agenda package, but trust that it's available upon request. Yep. Excellent. Thank you. All right. Any quick questions? Happy to answer them, but we'll reserve quite a bit of time for the public hearing portion.
Yeah, Jordan, we got the agenda out before you sent that, so I'll email that to the board. So that, it was 92 pages, so I didn't really
Yeah,
want to.
it's a good 8.5 megabytes,
Yeah.
so it'll take some download. All right, thank you, Jordan. The next item is public comments on items that are not on our agenda today. So if anyone would like to make a public comment, now's the time to do that. No one in the audience. Is there anyone online, on Zoom, or on the phone that would like to make a public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to item 7, which is the consent items. The only item on there is the approval of the minutes for the June 9th meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second?
And call the roll.
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Wyrick,
I think I might not have been in attendance that day,
You weren't?
so I'm abstaining.
Director Thielke,
Yes.
and Chair Hages.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, item 8 is the public hearing on the draft groundwater sustainability plan for the Ojai Basin. John?
I just have a few introductory comments before I turn it over to Dudek for their presentation. As everyone knows, the groundwater sustainability plans are required by the Groundwater Sustainability Act for groundwater sustainability agencies under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act of 2014. And previously, the agency had submitted an alternative to DWR that was not approved, and then required us to move forward with developing the groundwater sustainability plan. We are required to file this plan by the end of January of 2022. Plan is considered the initial steps in determining issues that the basin faces, including excess use of water, impacts on the environment, and identifying sustainability actions for the next 20 or 30 years. The plan will be adjusted and modified over time to take into account sustainability actions that are either working or not working, and identification of new actions to maintain the sustainability of the basin. And reports are required to be submitted to the Department of Water Resources on how the agency is progressing on implementing the groundwater sustainability plan. The process moving forward tonight is for the board to receive public comment, consider if any of the comments warrant modification of the plan. And in January, I want to bring the plan back with any modifications as necessary for their approval and ultimate approval to submit to the Department of Water Resources. Once a plan is submitted to Department of Water Resources, this will also trigger a public comment period through DWR, and so the public will have another opportunity to comment on the plan. Once comments are closed, Department of Water Resources will review the groundwater sustainability plan and determine if it's to be approved or sent back to the OBGMA for modification with it. And that modifications have to occur within 180 days. So I saw an email today that Department of Water Resources was requiring sub-basins in the San Joaquin Valley to modify their plans according to DWR's comments. So the recommendation for the proceeding with the hearing tonight is DUDEC to provide an overview of the plan, the board to receive public comment, the board to provide their comments based on public testimony in its review of the plan, and then direct staff and consultants to make any changes to the plan and bring back the final draft document for approval at its January 2022 meeting. So far, we've received 4 comment letters, one from Casitas Municipal Water District, one from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, one from Ventura County Public Works Agencies, and then there was a consolidated letter for several NGO groups that just came in just a few minutes ago. So that's what we received so far, and I'll turn it over to Trey for his presentation.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Thank you, Chair Hages. DUDEC really appreciates this opportunity to have prepared this plan. It's a little bit hard to believe that we just started this GSP about a year ago, and it's obviously been an expedited process, and we've attempted to use best available data to prepare this draft. The draft is obviously out now on the street. I'm not going to go into the plan in detail to allow for plenty of time for public comment. Again, the plan was prepared specifically for the Ojai Valley groundwater basin, the boundary of which you can see in blue on the screen. To date, and this is as of 10 minutes ago, we've received 4 comment letters. As John mentioned, from Casitas, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, County of Ventura Public Works, and we just received a NGO comment letter. We have had the opportunity to look at the 14 comments submitted by Casitas and prepare draft responsive comments for consideration by the board. We're not going to go into any detailed evaluation of individual comments, but we will present some general themes to the board. Since we did have the opportunity over the last week or so to look at the Casitas comments, we have provided some specific responses. Overall, their comments were substantive, and they provided clarifications and historical information that weren't captured in the GSP. Some examples are just simply the historical information regarding maximum water use from Lake Casitas or the current capacity of Lake Casitas. All those comments will be updated in the GSP. One thing that Casitas did point out, and it probably wasn't clear in the GSP, was that historically surface water supplies have not been metered for the Ojai Valley groundwater basin. They have been estimated. So this chart is showing surface water deliveries from 1985 through 2018, and these are estimated using the Ojai Basin groundwater model. We have had, by pressure zone, in the last couple of years, some data to do somewhat of an apples to comparison to see if these values are accurate, and they tend to be fairly accurate, but recognizing that this is a data gap, Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency has been working with Casitas, and that I'm happy to report that for water year 2020-21, we are expecting that we will have, for the first time, measured or metered data at the aggregate level. Are there any questions from the board on that slide?
So that's saying the Casitas usage within the OBGMA boundary
Yes, the usage within the boundary has always been estimated. There hasn't been, because of the way their pressure zones occur and overlap outside of the boundary, there never has really been a super accurate way of recording that information. But Casitas is internally working on a GIS data system right now where they will now be able to extrapolate on the parcel level the use within the basin and provide us that information on the aggregate. Because of confidentiality reasons, they're not indicating they will do it at the parcel level at this point in time, but that's something in the future that could be discussed, because when you think about water supply over the basin spatially, it is important to know, and we'll talk about it later, whether that water is being applied over areas of the perched aquifer versus areas where the water has the potential to migrate vertically downward into the principal aquifers.
Trey, just one quick comment. I think it's important to understand, and we'll work with Casitas on this, but there is a certain level of security for people's information that water agencies need to safeguard. But there's also a state law that does allow, and Peter Candy may know this in more detail, but does allow public agencies to share that information for a public benefit. And so that means we should be able to get that information, look at the parcel level down the road, and then use that as part of any analysis we need to do. But we certainly don't have to provide that to the public as public access to that information. So that's something we'll need to work with Casitas and help them understand that.
Thanks, John. Another question that was asked by Casitas and also some of the other comment letters was the extent of the perched aquifer, and if recharge projects were to be designed and located in the basin, would they benefit the principal aquifers, the primary producing zones, or would the water be captured primarily within the perched aquifer? Hopefully you can see this on the screen, but there's a hatching area that denotes the approximate extent of a clay aquitard, and this denotes the area of the perched aquifer. So in general, if you have recharge projects located north and east of the perched aquifer, this water can migrate vertically downward into the principal aquifers. Whereas if there were to be low impact development recharge projects overlying most of the city of Ojai, most of that water is likely going to be captured in the perched aquifer and likely not have the ability to migrate vertically downward into the principal aquifers. The GMA recognizes that there's water quality benefits from these projects and also potentially benefits to groundwater dependent ecosystems from these projects, and it may result in increased surface outflow from the basin. Any question on that particular issue?
Yes, one. We had that map before, and we had a map that was very definitive as to where the clay edge was and where that perched aquifer was.
Right. I should
Did
make
we
this
ever put a
yellow.
map in there that actually showed this is, 2 miles east or west of Carn or south of whatever, so we could kind of figure out, because, that's two different zones. One's going to perk into the lower aquifer. One is going to run off into the CDE zones. And it's kind of, where does that start?
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I should make this hatch yellow. It's really hard to see on the big screen here. I can see it on my computer, but essentially the portion of the basin that's towards the south and west, the third area of the basin really overlies this perched aquifer, and this is the area where projects are likely not going to contribute to production zones.
Right, you, obviously more of a direct impact on possible in-stream flow
Physical
support.
therapy, so I'm gonna take the car.
Okay.
You guys are meeting.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Someone's talking in the background.
Someone's not muted.
Where's the current recharge spot that you have right now?
I'll wait.
Okay.
I mean, how do you want to handle this?
What is a recharge spot?
Yeah.
Well, there is the San Antonio Spurting Grounds, which historically has been used to recharge water, but currently it's non-operational. But in addition to that location, there are ongoing projects for recharge, mostly for like low-impact development, best management practices within the city of Ojai. Many of those projects will likely overlie the perched aquifer. So I think a lot of folks are making the point that they're of limited benefit potentially to the principal aquifers. And obviously, you know, the GMA as a water management agency would have preference to locate projects, new projects in areas that would benefit the principal aquifers. There's not necessarily a current location.
But, I mean, her main question is where is it at? And it was actually near where the cursor was.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
There.
So, just to follow up, this boundary, well, obviously the perched aquifer recharge is more of an impact on in-stream flow than on the production layer. I assume that's noted in there. What's our confidence? I guess question for Jordan. Is this boundary, are we pretty confident that this whole perimeter that this is pretty close at this point? Or are we still in a matter of investigating that?
This is pretty close.
Okay.
Of course, new data could come to light that extends.
But as of now, we're pretty confident that this is, okay. And then the one other comment I'd just like to make is there any caveat in terms of actual recharge by design through the clay layer, in terms of some of these areas that are in the hatched areas where there might be potential for actual recharge through the clay layer into the production layer? Is that potential there or not?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the depth of that layer at any given location.
It'd have to be a
I mean,
deeper
you could do dry
recharge well.
wells
I'm talking about recharge wells.
to punch through that layer. You also have to consider water quality, and
Right.
also if you have some sort of dry well that's going through the clay layers, well, when you do have a full basin, you're gonna have potentially artesian conditions with
Right.
water coming up
Absolutely.
from that location.
Right.
So
That's why I asked whether that's even a
Yeah,
feasible thing to.
I think that any recharge project in the basin, you have to look at the site-specific conditions, and that may involve doing some drilling and, you know, determining at that exact location the depth of the lithology. I don't know if Jordan has any other comment.
Yeah, I think there's a number of management actions that could be added either under this current GSP or future management planning actions that can both identify the exact locations
Yeah.
where that kind of recharge could occur.
Okay.
And of course, as Trey mentions, the steps to make sure that the water quality objectives were met and of course it was technically feasible.
Okay. Thank you.
And then I'm not gonna go through each of Casitas's comments in detail. They'll be in the response to comment letter. But some additional sort of policy themes that they brought up was the integrated use of surface water and groundwater. They noted that Casitas has, you know, adopted a resolution to work conjunctively, or Ojai Basin GMA has adopted a resolution to work conjunctively with Casitas on this issue, but the full Casitas board, they noted, has not had an opportunity to consider that conjunctive use of water. So they were asking to more formally bring that to the Casitas board if the GMA wanted to pursue that. And then they also had some clarifications regarding state water project water. I think we suggested in the GSP that state water project water could be used in lieu of groundwater in the future, and they wanted to clarify that really that their position was that the lowest cost water to the Ojai Basin pumpers is groundwater, and that of course state water project water would be available during drier periods to be used by the basin, but they really felt that stating that it was like an in lieu use was a little bit of a stretch at this point, and if the GMA wanted to consider some sort of in lieu program, that they wanted to have the GMA bring that formally to Casitas. And those were the overall summary of the Casitas comments.
On the other comment letters, is the plan between now and January, you'll be addressing those, then circulating it, your evaluation of the other comments from the other agencies to us, or how are you
Right,
going to work that?
Dudek was looking for direction from the board on
Oh,
that.
so that's something for later on today,
We
okay.
felt that the Casitas comments were substantive and would result in direct updates to the GSP, so we
Right.
went ahead and did that. And we also did that to provide John an example of how we would respond to comments. And
Okay,
right now we've got 4 comment letters. I haven't looked at the 4th one yet because it just came in 10 minutes ago, but
so my question was kind of jumping the gun then.
it doesn't
Okay.
look like a huge lift necessarily at this
Okay.
point. Did Jim have a question?
No, I was just, so on like the county comments, I mean, some of them seem like quick, easy adds
Yes.
to clarify, and other times it seems like they completely didn't read a paragraph or something.
Yeah.
So the process will be, you'll go in, tweak it, and then we'll have a look in January?
Yeah,
Uh,
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
The proposed process is that we'll provide a formal response to comments letter, and for substantive comments that we think should include changes to the verbiage of the text or clarifications, we will do a red line version of the GSP and update those. There's some more policy type questions, or there's some data gaps that have been brought up that we simply don't have the time to address as part of the draft GSP, and I can get into those in a minute.
Okay. So, okay, thank you.
For the California Department of Fish and Wildlife comment letter, we received this letter, I believe, yesterday, so we haven't had an opportunity to go through all of the comments in detail, but we just wanted to provide the board just kind of some themes that come from the letter. Got 4 themes here. CDFW has requested that we clarify methods and results of the groundwater dependent ecosystem characterization process. Again, haven't gone through it in detail, but some of it is just that the information is included either in the public draft or in the appendix, and they simply missed it. So if there's cases like that, we will direct them to where we specifically provided the information. The second one was to establish minimum thresholds and measurable objectives for interconnected surface water and GDEs. I think we've made it clear to the board and clear in the GSP that the data to do that is just simply not available today. That the board is and the GMA have been collecting additional data. For instance, the addition of a new nested well in the basin to further understand surface water, groundwater interactions, and GDEs, and that this is something that is going to take place during GSP implementation. there simply isn't the data or the time between now and January to study this in a more robust manner. The third one was reselect minimum thresholds for groundwater levels that would better protect environmental uses and users of groundwater. So essentially, this comment is that they don't think there's substantial evidence for selecting the minimum threshold for groundwater storage and groundwater levels in the basin. They don't think that, well, they kind of suggested that it was arbitrary to use historical lows in the basin, and that at this point, they're not necessarily protective of environmental uses. I think this really ties back to number 2, in that we didn't have sufficient data at this point in time to establish any thresholds for interconnected surface water and GDEs. And the fourth one was to update the hydrogeological characterization model to better characterize principal aquifers and aquatards. Really, the ask here is, I think, fairly substantial. That to really do that on a basin-wide scale in more detail would likely involve potentially the use of surface geophysics and or additional drilling projects and creating additional nested wells in the basin. As you're well aware, the groundwater contours are based on sort of an average of all the aquifers across the basin, and they really seem to be suggesting that we need depth-specific groundwater levels to better understand the basin. With that, are there any questions with the themes that were emphasized in the Fish and Wildlife comment letter?
Yeah, I have a number of them. It appears that 2 and 3 are moot, and we really can't do anything about those. We can, there's just nothing to do. We can establish or not establish. The other thing is it appears that they're writing this from the point of view that they believe that the 4 aquifers are interconnected, and at least that's what I'm reading out of it. And my understanding and the science tell me absolutely not. They're not interconnected. And is it really our charge where we need to go do something outside of the scope of our own basin? Should we be doing any study or giving any information on that? And I don't think so. I think we confine ourselves to ourselves and then let them figure it out, because I don't know who else these letters are going to. If they're going to the other, 15 or 16 different water agencies we have here in the valley. And I think that I don't see that we have an answer to any of these, actually. So that's my comment.
Thanks, Bob. I think you're correct that they're implying that we're managing water as one water concept, and that they may not be understanding the complexity in this basin, and it's something that we strive to present in the GSP, and there's probably maybe a better way of describing some of it to them, but I think, for instance, the data that Jordan's currently collecting with the new nested well really further supports that there is a multi-aquifer system in this basin, and we just have to collect more data and present it in a better manner so they begin to understand how this basin works. And I don't know if Jordan has anything to add on that, but
Certainly, more data are always better if they're defensible. And the evolution of the understanding is always ongoing because of that additional data. We've got a really good handle on it. It's been improving for decades, and will continue to do so through the implementation of the plan.
What I find a little ironic, I'll just say it, is that CDFW, saying, oh, you need more data, you need to update, and yet when they're presented with critiques of the lack of data behind some of their assumptions, they don't seem to be very responsive.
Richard, you had a question in the
Just a question, a comment for the audience. If you would please come to the podium and state your name, and if you're affiliated with anyone, we just need it in the record so that we, do that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Soul. I'm not really affiliated with the group, but I teach at Cal State Channel Islands, and I live here. And I wondered about sort of the tension I'm catching here. Casitas is arguing that groundwater is a little cheaper, as I understand it, and so they would prefer that over state water. And is the California Department of Fish and Wildlife just concerned that we're over tapping our groundwater? Is that what I'm catching? That we are overdrawing the basin, Trey? Is that what your feeling is, or is it just now we're just getting a snapshot of where we are? Is that where we are, or is there actually a little bit more in this that there is a tension arising? Curious. Thanks.
You know what? Before Trey, I'll make a comment there. My guess is, I think tension is a good and interesting word, and I think it's probably the similar comments that they've applied to other basins where there is a groundwater component. And luckily, however it be not perfect, we do have some knowledge of our underlying hydrology, and ourselves and United have been studying it and monitoring it for years, which is far different than most of the state. So I think we do have good knowledge, and I think tension's an interesting word, but I think we've gotten an understanding of where the upper aquifer versus the lower aquifer, how they play into the surface water, and getting that explained. And I'm the farmer, he's the scientist. He's explained it several times, and as we've learned more, we've gotten better understandings, and I think we just have to better demonstrate through verbiage, in this case, in charts, what that is.
Yeah, I think I got the impression a lot of this letter was boilerplate. Be interesting to see how many other plans got the same verbiage. But I agree. I mean, we've probably done more than most basins as far as that issue goes. And I don't know that we're not going to do more. It doesn't say anywhere in our plan that we're not going to continue to investigate this. The issue now is cost benefit. I mean, there's a lot of other things we need to know before we were going to spend the kind of money it would take to answer this question. So I think that the cost benefit is a major issue. Where do you want us to spend our resources? What is the most important data to gather? I would suspect they're more interested in number 2 than they are in number 3 in the surface water and groundwater interconnections than they are in the detail on those lenses. So I think we're probably going to try to help Trey with how to respond to these, but I think we're going to have to do it in fairly general terms, and not say absolutely not, we're not going to do this, but this is a 20-year plan, so there may be time later to address some of these things. Bob?
The OBGMA was founded in 1991. I think at that time there was maybe only one other groundwater authority at that time. So this one has got a very long history and has been through a lot of different challenges and results. And as I look at this, it's like they're sending out a letter with a conclusion for us to confirm the conclusion that they don't understand and they have no knowledge of. And the other thing is, you have to take a look at the reality. If they ever actually wanted to know something, this process has been in process for a number of years. That letter could have shown up a couple of years ago instead of 6 weeks before the deadline to turn this thing in. And so it's totally not reasonable to expect that they're going to get the kind of information that they're fishing for. So that's the way I see it. Too much and way too late.
Well, I think a lot of it is, you know, the way this thing is put together. I mean, we can address any of these comments by simply saying, we will, you know, consider that in the next 5-year or 10-year review process. Well, you know, I don't think it's gonna do any good to say, hell no, we're not gonna do that.
You know, I did want to share, though, I think, you know, the unfortunate part of it is many of the state agencies, they comment based upon their view of a much larger world. And, you
Yes.
know, and this agency assists 154 well owners in this valley. And so there's not unlimited resources here. And so we kind of have to pick and choose on what we're going to be able to do in the future. And I think is what the agency has done is collecting data since 1991, and we'll continue to collect data. And hopefully we'll have some projects that will get us much better data and better define the basin and decide where do we need to put the resources. But ultimately, it's going to fall back on these 154 well owners, unless the state is willing to come up with some funding, which always has its difficulty and strings.
And the residents,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
the people of the Ojai Valley. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, and the other thing is I don't know if they have any idea of the size of this basin in comparison to the rest of California. I mean, this is a pretty tiny basin, in the scheme of things. And we've probably studied it more than, well, studied it far more than some of the largest basins, so. Okay, Trade, next.
Yeah, Susan, I appreciate the comment. You know, Fish and Wildlife is really, has an obligation to look at public trust resources, and through SGMA, GSPs were required to look at all beneficial users of groundwater, including the environment and groundwater-dependent ecosystems. And we have done that through the GSP. It's just that at this time, we don't have sufficient data to develop any sort of thresholds for groundwater-dependent ecosystems or surface water-groundwater interactions. And we have specific projects and management actions defined in the GSP to study that further. And that would occur during implementation, but this plan has to be submitted to the Department of Water Resources on January 31st, 2022. And we simply just don't have time to do these studies. We're talking probably about a multi-year effort to do some of these studies, and we don't have time in the next couple of months to do everything they want. I'm going to jump onto the Public Works comment letter. 5 general themes we have identified so far. Again, this was, I believe, submitted earlier today, and really haven't had a time to dig into every single comment. But in general, they want us to update the hydrogeological characterization of the basin to better describe hydrogeology. I think this is a similar comment to Fish and Wildlife. They asked to expand discussion of the county general plan and other policies. I think we provided a pretty robust background in the GSP. Certainly, I think may need to touch base with them directly to see what they're looking for. Expand discussion of minimum thresholds and undesirable results, and if undesirable results have historically occurred or not. Reconsider wells included in the monitoring network, and identify opportunities for collaboration with other agencies, entities, and stakeholders. Are there any questions or discussion on those themes?
Trey, what would number 4 be? You know, I take a look at this wordsmithing that we're doing, and I take a look at some of these questions, and I read it. And I read insurance contracts and claims for a living, so we have some fairly technical stuff. These words are put together not to really say anything or ask anything or answer anything. So can you tell me what number 4 means?
Right, we've established a monitoring network in the GSP for groundwater levels and groundwater quality that you know, spatially represents the basin. And I think you know, they did have some comments about which wells they have access to and monitoring issues. So it sounds like they have some specific knowledge of some of this work, but again, I mean, we received this morning.
And again, how old is?
We talked about this on the way I was driving up here, but I haven't had a chance to look into the specific comment, but I think they're just looking for us to outreach with them and make sure that since the watershed protection district is managing or monitoring some of these wells, that they just probably want us to confirm the wells that we're using and that they're going to be accessible during the implementation period.
And it seems specifically like one well in specifically, they didn't think fluctuated enough, or something was how I read it. Which
And
it
we
could be
just,
changed.
and how long have we had that monitoring well in? 3 months, 2
No,
months
no, that-
online?
No, this is completely different. They're monitoring existing wells, and that's what they're referring to, you know, similar to what Jordan has been doing on existing wells.
Yeah, and it's, again, thank you, Trey, for distilling this into themes, which, you know, there's of course more details in these comment letters, but as a point of discussion, in a monitoring network, you'd ideally have wells that are represented in representative aquifers that are correlative, which is why a depth discrete monitoring well is so effective.
Like our key well?
Or the key well, knowing that it's in a deep portion and is exclusively to the main aquifer system, things of that nature. So if you have, in a monitoring well network that's otherwise undifferentiated, water levels in one zone over here and one zone over here, but you're not really sure which is which,
And they have access, because we put that on our site, correct?
there's that access, and also this is from the county, so
Okay, so
they've
I'm-
been
So
monitoring.
they monitor well depths.
Oh, no, I got it. And so, are they talking about them reconsidering their own wells to monitor? Because we've kind of identified ours. It just seems like
It's on us.
either way. I'm gonna get off of that. It seems that these questions are just to have them say that, I don't know, that they want Standard to be represented. I don't really think that they're looking for any answers. It just seems it's a question for a question, not a question for an answer.
Yeah, we fully expect that the representative monitoring points that we've selected in the basin may change over time, especially if new wells are drilled, such as nested completions. So we're more than happy to reach out to them and explain our thinking behind the monitoring network. And if they have specific information about additional wells they would like us to include, we're more than happy to consider that. Any other comments or questions on the themes from Public Works?
Real quick, Trey, the photograph you're showing here looks to me to be San Antonio Creek near the discharge point of the basin. Is that a photograph that you put on the slide to accompany this theme, or was that something that came from the county of Ventura?
Just something visually nice to look at, Jordan.
I agree.
It's definitely a cool spot. That is one area I've been able to check out in the basin.
Yeah, and incidentally, it's a very significant portion, because that's about where we have, just as of today, reinstalled our logger in the creek. So we're able to monitor the forthcoming flows at that point on a 10-minute interval over the next few months, effectively the winter. So we'll see some interesting data coming from that.
I'd like to suggest on number 5 that, as we mentioned, the agency's been in play since 1991. And if there's opportunities for collaborations, it's much more difficult for this agency to reach out because of the limitation of staffing and those kind of things. So it seems, in my mind, it's a two-way street, and the county should take that effort since they have a lot more resources. And call
For
them, sit
example,
down.
Spreading Grounds, which is
Yeah.
county facility.
Yeah. And it
But
hasn't worked, so.
they haven't put back in operation.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's been, tried to been collaboration. That was a grant project. It was built, and I know, Jordan, you were involved in that, I believe, as well. It's before my time, but I just want to say it's a two-way street, and so I'd ask the county to start developing a dialogue with us if that's where they need to go.
Okay, do you have any more?
I think there's one more. Wait. That was the last one. The NGO letter just came in, and we haven't had an opportunity to review that. So, John, it's back to you.
So I guess at this point, it's, the board wish to have some discussion and then,
Well, we
well,
should
take
open-
public comment prior to your discussion?
Yeah, we
and see
should
if there's
take any public comments
Went out
as
there
part
that
of the
wants-
hearing first. So if anyone here in the audience that wishes to comment on the plan, as you state your name and your affiliation, please.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is,
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Bill Miley. My family has been around since 1968, and I've attended many of these meetings in the past. I like these meetings. So my comments are, I have some questions, I have some statements, I have some evaluations. I'm not anywhere close to being totally knowledgeable. My background's in public health, but I've paid attention to this almost for the last 30 years. And I am excited to know that we were, if not the first, one of the first in the entire California state to have a legislative endorsed, created groundwater basin management agency. I think that's outstanding. From what I see and what I've read, I haven't read all 178 pages, but I've read a bunch of them. It looks to me like we're in pretty good shape. I was just looking at the chart that says water budget, and it looks to me like we are doing pretty well in recharging the basin. That was on page 194 of 700. Oh, okay. Anyway, that looks pretty good. And so that's my public observation of that chart. Whether I'm right or wrong, I'm not sure, but I hope I'm right. Several places in the plan, they're talking about reclaimed water. My understanding is that there is no way the sanitary district is providing reclaimed water to this valley. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But I saw that mentioned a few times in the chart, not necessarily saying we're depending on that, but we're hoping to do that sometime. Is that correct?
Well, in the past, I've had some
That's why it's
discussions.
slacking, and that's why you pretend like you can't see far away. Can you mute
Hello,
people?
Who's talking?
please don't speak while you're
No.
watching the meeting.
She doesn't know. I don't think they know they're unmuted.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's not a big issue.
I was just going to mention that I've had some discussion with the sanitary district in the past, and their kind of general comment at that time was, well, if you want to have recycled water, you got to be willing to pay for it because they're not going to.
Yeah, I think though the general idea is there's been some discussion of investigating putting in package plants upstream and treating the water before it goes to the main plant for recharge during dry seasons. You know, it's nothing that's been fully developed, but I think that is a concept. I think the Ojai Valley Inn has looked at trying to do that with their own facilities.
Well, there's also the entire septic area that if it was converted to treatment
Yeah.
instead of septic is,
It's already recharging.
no, that's what I'm trying to say, though.
Yeah.
Don't you?
That's
think
right.
vice versa?
Huh?
The Seward area, because the septic does go to recharge.
It does go to recharge, but if environmental requirements to keep going the way they're going,
Yeah, the
the
whole
septic
idea
may need to be converted.
you could build package plants that are connected to the main treatment plant, and
Are used
Reclaim water
for
during-
irrigation
You-
before
you
getting
know,
to the treatment plant.
yeah, you don't want to have to discharge it to the stream, but.
Yeah, I only mentioned the septic
It's-
area
it's-
because
it's
that's
not a
eventually,
well-developed idea.
it may not continue to meet standards.
Okay, so that's basically a small item. I am aware of what Ventura is doing in producing this huge reclaimed water plant that they're apparently are building, but they don't have permit, I understand, from the state for that. The septic systems in the valley, I saw the picture, the map on that. Those are huge. We have all the East End, basically. And then what is this big yellow area south or west of Vaughn's that has, it's a huge yellow map. Does that mean all the houses in Valerio and such are not sewered? They're all septic? They can't be.
Do you have?
Let me see if I can find the relationship. There's like 780 septic. Is that a problem at all? Because I noticed there was a comment about some bacterial contamination in the surface or in the waters in the East End. Is that a problem? And that would be from septic systems.
Are you talking about south and west of Vaughn's?
I'm talking
For
about
septic,
what
areas
appears
of
to be
septic?
west of Vaughn's. There's a huge yellow part of the map that shows what I understood was septic systems.
That's the Arbolada area.
That's Arbolada.
That's Arbolada.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
referring to the Arbolada. I think that's our largest concentration.
And that issue, as I remember, it comes up every once in a while about putting a sewer
what I was
system and they
referring-
don't want to pay for it.
That's what I was referring to.
Okay. All right, that's good. So I understand that there's an average recharge of about 6,000 acre feet per year, average. And that would well cover the use, which is probably around 5,000 acre feet. Is that correct? And that, to me, looks really good.
Yeah, I think the safe yield that we've been using for some time is around 5,000 acre feet.
It looks like we have more recharge over the years than we have use, which, in my opinion, would say that the Ojai Basin Management Agency is doing a good job.
But I think some of that water isn't pumped, it's lost in other ways, I would assume. Jordan?
I'd like to ask,
Yeah.
I know that the San Antonio Creek from the report, San Antonio Spreading Grounds, only recharges about 150 acre feet a year.
The
Is that not
spreading
true?
gun is not an operation.
I know, but at one point when it was being used years ago,
It's
that's
never
what it
been in
was.
operation
Well,
since,
that's what I read in the report.
it's
okay.
never been put back in operation.
Then,
after
and I remember years ago when you folks were able to get a grant to redo it because it got all covered up with junk. I guess the question is, why can't that start to work again? Is it permits? Is it geology?
It's all of those things.
Isn't the control of that with Ventura County
Yes.
and not the OBGMA and none of the water districts up here?
And Ojai Water Conservation District. So I'll speak to that. It's still under the auspice of the county. They want to turn it over to water conservation. We don't want to take it until it's worked. The design that's required for the fish screen has not proven to work. And given the amount of flow required for the city of Ventura, we have not even met the thresholds, but one time when it was too silty to work. So it's basically the difference of the old design versus the new design, and the new design has not been proven out, and so the Water Conservation District won't take it. And in dry years, we can't even make assessments of, what's the next step done. So that's,
And that's one of
it's
the,
a
one-
standstill.
that was one of the first, or the main reason you were formed, right? To get that recharge system set up.
Help with it.
So is there anything that, I gather not, that the Ojai Basin Agency can do to push that to a functioning spreading basin?
You know, there's a really nice article on that on OBGMA website, by the way. And the purpose of Matilaha was to throw that conduit in all the way up to the east end and recharge. And then when you look at our site, you'll see that we put more than 10,000 acre feet of water using that conduit where they gravity flow came up. Well, read that so we don't have to go through the whole thing, but it got,
Well,
But
got
I remember
repurposed in
Specifically-
85.
But specifically to the spreading grounds, the screens were not working. We came up with a design to try and make them work, but now it takes a flow in the creek, and I forget how many CFS it is, but we even need more than that to test
Well, that's
whether
true,
we
yeah.
silt up again or not.
right.
I personally don't think the design is ever gonna work.
Okay.
I think it's gonna take a redesign of the fish screens, but that's my personal guess.
And county hasn't been willing to allocate any funds to really look at a redesign.
And you can only you can only test it when you have that flow, so it's not
Exactly.
even once a year
Right.
recently.
But I would contend that the very nature of the design is flawed if the water you're using is from the flow.
No,
As
it's-
opposed, there's some design flaws in the system.
Anyway, we've been
So-
talking about that for
Okay,
quite some time.
so I want to reference the map that has blue in it that shows the recharge areas of the basin. Is it a priority for the basin agency to develop more recharge areas and expand the ones that currently are known? And also, what about this whole idea that's been discussed about adding more bioswales within the city of Ojai so we catch more runoffs?
It won't.
That's
Bill,
an
it will,
ongoing grant that we
But
have.
if you'd looked at the map and you'd taken a look at the perched water,
Well, I
and you
haven't done
would
that.
see that we're west, all those bioswales are not going to go into the lower aquifer for water.
Right.
What they're
But-
going to do is they're going to hit the hard pan, they're going to hit the clay, and they're going to run lateral elevation, gravity, and they're going to run into the dry barrancas, and they're going to run into the CDE zones. But they are not going to go down and charge the groundwater
No, but they'll help with in-stream
west
flow.
of about Carn Road.
So we need more in the east end.
Bill, I would invite you to pay attention to the next council meeting coming up. There'll be a report on the in-stream flow grant projects that are being defined, and they're going to be presented to the next council meeting.
Good.
There's quite a litany of projects that are being compiled along the lines you're talking about, mainly for the in-stream flow enhancement,
Good. Okay.
using on the perch
So I'm going to talk about the
In-stream
Modesto
flow, but
ash,
not
that,
recharge.
not the production aquifer, no.
the 82 Modesto ash trees that died. And I read where Casitas, or Soul Golf Course, has 2 wells, and the Soul Recreation Park has none. Wouldn't the Groundwater Basin Agency be interested in seeing that the county got approval, which they do, to drill a well so they could water trees in the future?
No.
Why is that?
What? It's a lot more water use, and they chose the grass over the trees evidently, but that's still out for
I know
discussion.
they used close to 1 million acre feet, I guess, or gallons or whatever it was, but they didn't put them into the trees deeply. They chose to use the turf.
I don't think expanding more ornamental vegetation in the drought and the desert that we have now is really the best beneficial use of our aquifer.
I just think, I don't think it's our purview.
No.
Yeah, it's
I
not.
think that's their business.
There's
You
no,
could apply for a
Yeah.
well, and then it would be looked at by the county, and it would be looked at by you folks, right?
but from a
You-
water conservation point of view, there's no net gain. They're getting water from Casitas. Casitas has a limited supply, the basin has a limited supply, so, and it isn't, like Jim said, it's really not our issue, so.
All right. I thought, and I didn't read all 100 or 700 pages, but what I read, and a lot of it I read, I spent 2 or 3 hours doing this. I liked the commentary and I liked the maps. I liked the way it was presented. I thought it was, from a public point of view, I thought it was really well done.
Oh.
And I could understand it, and it made sense to me, and I have a whole bunch of questions, but I'm almost through here. So since agriculture uses the largest percentage of water out of the 5,000 acre feet, do we have any way of preventing a farmer from planting pistachios, which I understand draw massive amounts of water, so that we keep our lower watering agriculture present and prevent agriculture that draws a lot, like in the central?
I'll take that as the farmer of the group. You're gonna go to highest and best use, and what infrastructure is present in Ventura County. You know, the structure that's present in Ventura County that's high use is vegetables, but vegetables don't grow on rocky ground. That's why we're at citrus and avocados. And
Yeah.
everybody is afraid of water usage, so you wouldn't be going up in usage here, you'd be going down in
That's good.
usage. Do you need to limit time on?
Yeah, I know. We have a time limit, so if you could wrap up
Okay,
your last few
sure.
things, please.
So the septic systems are not a problem in the valley. Then there was, the last question would be this, subsurface outflow was estimated to be 90 acre feet per year. Is that what leaves the basin and goes into the upper river, Ventura River Basin? 90 acre feet? Subsurface outflow. That was on page 194 of 718.
Yes, that's correct.
That's
That's what's
correct.
been estimated using the numerical model developed for the
So
basin.
we don't lose a lot.
That's our current understanding.
Okay. And then I want, this is a compliment, but I really liked the cover of your report, the 3D presentation of the valley. And I and a few other people are looking to get a physical 3D representation of the valley, so we use that when we talk about circulation, moving people out based on wildfires and such. Is there any way that anybody here can help me work on a 3D presentation that would be physical of the Ohio Valley, like your map?
I'll have to talk to our graphics department, but we may have that capability.
I will contact you. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Does anyone else in the audience have comments?
Or online?
Does anyone online that's on Zoom or on the phone have any comments?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Online. Hello, my name is Kevin Delano. I'm a geologist at the State Water Board. I just wanted to draw your attention to some information on flow that was recently published by the Colorado Department of Fish and Wildlife. On November 22nd of this year, they published what they're calling a tech report for San Antonio Creek, where they looked at in-stream flow needs for still-head adult spawning and juvenile rearing. And so that's some new flow information that perhaps the GSA could consider. This is a tech report. They are developing more formal in-stream flow recommendations. I think I shouldn't speak, I'm kind of in a weird role because I work at the State Water Board, but I'm just making you aware of something that they've published. There isn't a CFW staff person here on this call. But my understanding is that they will be working on more formal flow recommendations for San Antonio Creek and also other parts of the Ventura River watershed. So I encourage you to look at that tech report, which includes some flow evaluation for San Antonio Creek, and I think we can all probably expect that to be turned into a more formal looking recommendation next year.
Who published it?
California Department of Fish and Wildlife.
And it's available on their website, available where's?
Yes, it's on their website.
Tech reports I thought were circulated. They came out just a couple weeks ago.
That's what I'm referring to. Yes.
Yeah.
So these two tech reports they published on November 22nd are the last two of four that they will be publishing for the Ventura River watershed, and they kind of reflect the field work they've done in the watershed and their studies. Which again, I'm a geologist at the State Water Board. It's a different agency, but I'm just kind of paraphrasing how I understand it.
And Kevin, this is Bill Wyrick. Those tech reports, my understanding is they're still based on the CDFW's assumptions about unimpaired conditions. Is that correct?
I can't speak to that.
Okay.
John, is there a way for us to get a copy emailed to the?
Yeah, I'll see what we can do to get that report.
Okay, thank you.
If you give me an email address, I can email to you right now. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity.
You could send a copy of that report to obgma@aol.com.
Sure.
Or if you can't get it through that because it's large enough, maybe I know you guys can't use Dropbox, but maybe you have
I can send you
another
certain
link.
or two. I can send you a link. It'll be it's a link to their website where the document is
Yeah,
published
great.
online.
Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
All right, thank you. Are there any other comments from people online or on Zoom?
This is Emily here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm an alternate to Jim Finch on the board, and I thank him for going to all the meetings. But I think the report was excellent, and I look forward to it getting submitted. I also think it might be good on the homepage of the OBGMA to list, to make it clear that we can't incorporate substantial comments at this point because it's the holidays, it's COVID, and we can't start new studies that are going to be included in something that needs to be turned in 6 weeks or so. Just to make that clear to the public, it seems like I was just on the UVRGA, the Upper Ventura public comment meeting, and we get these last minute long letters with many ideas, and it's frustrating as a board to try to put those all together at the last minute. So maybe put something on there that this is a plan that gets reviewed every few years and it's an ongoing process so that people understand they can be heard at the last minute. Because I know a lot of people slacked off these last few years and weren't paying attention, and now we need to turn these plans in. So, so people know it's an ongoing process. But thank you. Good job.
Thanks, Emily. Anyone else online? Okay, one quick one.
Bill Bradley again. One important thing I forgot was, I've been interested in for a few years. Does the Basin Agency have an extraction ordinance now that would be able to limit the draw up, the pull up, if we got into a very extreme severe drought?
Thank you.
Well, I think that's part of what we're going to be doing as part of this groundwater sustainability plan, is ultimately developing our policies and procedures for if we get into a severe enough drought situation. We've worked on some of those details. I know Jordan has given some presentations to the board in the past about that. And so that will be one of the things that we'll have to develop and make sure it's clear that if, in certain cases, if there needs to be restrictions of water, here's how we'll implement it. And of course, then there's the enforcement part of it too. So, but I think it's going to be part of what we ultimately end up with down the road as part of the following through on the sustainability of the basin.
All right, thank you. Well, if there's no further comments, we can close this public hearing. And now the board should have an opportunity to make any comments that they would like, if any.
Well, I'll make the same comment because I hadn't seen all of the other comments, but I think in some cases, the commenters caught useful things that we can reference or clarify or point out. And then other times, I think we need to guide them to where we think we answered their question. And that third category of, as Jordan said, it's that item. It would be wonderful to know, but we don't. And the thing that for the state that's on and for a lot of the government agencies, we are such a tiny basin in comparison to some of the basins that they're dealing with in the Sacramento Valley or the San Joaquin Valley, the 158 or whatever wells, and the I don't know what it is, 10,000 odd people, 10 to 12,000 odd people, that we're the ones that pay for it, and we have to be mindful of it because we want to keep this livable to all of us. So I think that's where this board has, yes, we could have developed a lot more information over the past 30 odd years if we had had an unlimited budget, but previous directors were very mindful and cognizant of budgets. And now we realize that, maybe there are some data gaps that we have to fill, and we will go about filling that in this process. And I think we have to just make sure that the public understands that we're in that. And sometimes you don't know you have a data gap until you really look at one aspect of it. So please appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, the goal of this is to maintain a sustainable groundwater basin and a sustainable groundwater supply and a sustainable ecosystem to go along with it. If along the way we're able to do that with the information we have, then we're good. I mean, if we run into some things that we don't have enough information to achieve that goal, then we're going to have to look farther. But we can't anticipate everything we're going to need to know today. All right, if there's no further comments, the public hearing is closed. And did you want to discuss any further how you're going to address these, or are you clear on what you should?
Yeah, I think we're pretty clear on the process that we will provide formal response to comments for the 4 letters that were received as of today, December 9th, 2021. I can't necessarily commit to additional comment letters that are received after today, but if there are some that come in and we have availability to do that, we'll talk to John and discuss the number of comments received and whether or not we have time and budget to address those comments. And then lastly, I just want to make a general comment to the board that it's a pretty exciting time in the Ventura watershed. There's a lot of ongoing studies. There's in the Fish and Wildlife comment letter, there's mention to studies that were completed in the last month or so. And we simply just don't have the time in the next month to incorporate new data and information. We recognize that information will be available in the future, but it's not going to be incorporated into this draft GSP.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it might be helpful just to note somewhere in the plan that those studies have been completed in the last 30 days or so. We're aware of it, and that's it.
Not even the last 30 days,
Yeah.
the last 15 days.
And
15 days.
I think there's some allusions been made to where you can, the plan itself can talk about how you incorporate ongoing studies into the 5-year plan or whatever. I mean, it just acknowledged that.
Yeah.
And I see it goes without saying that if new comment letters come in or as you're involved in drafting comments, you'll circulate that to the board just so we're aware in real time when these things are coming in, if more come in.
Yes, and we provided the John and Chair Hage as an example with the Casitas response.
Right.
Yeah, as long as we don't get anything that's, that we didn't anticipate, I think we'll be fine. Okay, next item, Treasurer's Report.
I'll make this brief. We're continuing to have expenses exceeding our revenue due to the GSP preparation. About 84,000 disbursements in October. We'll have a report to you in November, or in January, got to November, December. But last I heard from the bookkeeper, we've got about $14,000 in reserve. So we're pretty low, but we'll be coming up with another billing soon for extractions, and we're watching our pennies right now. And so, I talked to Peter Candy and I know several of us are not billing the agency at this time. Doing what we can to make sure we can stretch those dollars at least a little bit. I did submit a $86,000 monitoring well grant reimbursement request, so I don't know when we're gonna get it, but the agency came back and wanted some clarification and a couple of corrections, so I've taken care of that. So if we get that, then we're in pretty good shape. Based on extraction statements received so far for the water year 2020 and 2021, there's been about 4,277 acre-feet of water extracted from the basin this year. So that's
For the 3 quarters?
4 quarters.
For the, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
You know,
With the
through
completed-
October,
The
yeah.
completed year, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
And I say so far because sometimes the extraction statements dribble in a little bit.
yeah, no, I jumped back.
But that's to the end of the water year,
That's
Okay.
for the 4 quarters of the water.
of the water year ending September 30th.
I jumped back to that calendar
No, I
year,
don't think
my
it's gonna change
apology.
a lot,
Okay.
but kind of gives you a sense of where we ended up this year. Yeah, it's not bad considering as dry as it's been.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
and
very good.
First quarter, we'll still have decent billings,
Yes.
because we only stopped irrigating for one period.
That's all I have.
Okay, can I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report if there's no questions?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Thielke?
Yes.
Director Byrick?
Yeah, that German name. Yes.
And Chair Hages?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is to schedule a January board meeting, and it would be a board meeting in which we would adopt the GSP for submittal. And John and I talked about having it earlier than the 27th, so we're not right up against the deadline.
I would
So
say
what would be a good day? We could do the 19th. It was a third, it would.
earlier.
Earlier?
How about the 6th?
Give me a couple of dates, just in case I've got any issues with the city and scheduling of the room.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, we can do it as early as the 6th. If the city can handle it,
6, 12, or 13?
yeah.
6 or 13?
6, yeah, if you're gonna keep a Thursday, 6 or 13.
Okay. I'll coordinate with the city and make sure, your preference is to have the early meeting, the 6th?
Yeah, I'd feel better.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Just recognize we got the holidays, so it'll be a little bit of
Yeah.
a scramble to get the agenda out, but we'll get it done.
Well, getting the comments incorporated, I mean,
Yes.
Trey's got to do that, so we've
And
got to
and I'll
have time to
talk
do
with
that.
Trey and we'll make sure we're coordinated too.
Okay. I mean,
Okay.
we've done it, we've been up against the wall the whole year, so done a pretty good job of it, money-wise and time-wise.
Yeah, I really want to thank Dudek because I think they've done a great job and they've been responsive to your questions as well as our questions. And I think we're going to have a pretty good document to at least start this journey for the future.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. There's information items. If anyone has any questions on that, otherwise we will adjourn at 3:25.
And Trey, thank you for being so complete and providing such good information. And you too, Jordan. That's really been helpful on this.